So let's start talking about our cost of goods sold. Typically in cost of goods sold, you do need to go through all these steps, this longer version. However, the homework problem and also the example in your textbook assumes that there is no work in process. And if you've done your reading of the short article I assigned, you'd know that work in process is not raw material inventory and it's not finished goods inventory. Instead, what it is inventory that's partially completed, that we started working on, started gathering the raw materials and doing some work of putting it together, but it's not yet in finished goods state. When you do have work in process inventory, it does make the cost of good calculation a little more complex. But for purposes of, like I said, for purposes of this exercise and for purposes of the homework, we just assume that there was no WIP. So this means we can do the short version. We actually don't need to go through this long version. We'll get the same result. However, I did still want to include this long version in the lecture just to talk about how we would normally get this information. So normally what we would use is we'd be pulling from our direct material budget and we'd be pulling the cost of direct materials used. We'd be pulling the cost of direct labor and the cost of factory overhead. So we'd be pulling in all our manufacturing costs. We'd be adding in our beginning finished goods inventory, and that would give us our cost of goods available for sale. So this is the cost of everything that we had available for sale. From that, we'd subtract out the finished goods inventory that we didn't sell, so the units that we didn't sell, and that would give us our cost of goods sold for all the units that we actually did sell in that current period. So if you look here, direct materials is the only one that's a little more complex. What we actually want to have here is only the direct materials that were actually used in that period to produce goods. So if you scroll back up to our direct material budget, this is all that was required in pounds to produce our required production for the month. So this is actually all you need for your direct materials used. You need these number of pounds here multiplied by the cost per pound. So if you scroll back down here, 37,500 multiplied by $2 gives us our 74,000. So that's what we're actually using here. You can also use this formula. It actually gives you the same result because we don't have work in process. But start with your beginning raw materials, add up all your purchases, and subtract out your ending raw materials. And that'll back you back in again to what we actually had to use to meet current production needs. So that's what we've got for direct materials. Now direct labor, because we don't have to worry about beginning or ending inventories, we just simply pull from the direct labor budget. You can see that's coming right from there. Factory overhead, again, we don't have to worry about beginning, ending inventories or work in process inventory, so we're just pulling directly from the factory overhead budget, which is right here. When we add all this up, these are our total manufacturing costs. So our direct materials, our direct labor, and our factory overhead, all three of these give us our total manufacturing costs. To that, we're going to add our beginning finished goods inventory. And this, we'll scroll back up here. This is what the number of units that we needed for our beginning inventory. So we're going to take this number in units and we're going to multiply that by the cost of each unit. And that's what we're actually going to put down here for our beginning finished goods inventory. So there's 180,000 right here, and all of these figures are based on $60 per unit, and then we just multiply that by our beginning finished goods inventory from our production budget. So once we add in our beginning finished goods inventory, then we have all the costs available for sale, and then we're going to subtract out our ending finished goods inventory. And that comes from right up here. So the budget we prepared in the prior step. So we actually are going to use this not only to calculate cost of goods sold, but this figure will actually wind up going on our balance sheet because this is the value of our ending finished goods inventory. This is the inventory that's still in stock. We haven't sold it yet. So the cost of these units is not hitting our income statement yet. It's still staying on our balance sheet until we sell these units. So this line we prepare for two reasons. One, to put it on our balance sheet, and then also so we can calculate our cost of goods sold. But as I mentioned, we've simplified the problem. So actually all you'll need to do on your homework is this little section right here. So what we're going to take here is our budgeted unit sales. So this is how many units we're going to sell each period. And that was way back up at the beginning. So these numbers right here, I'm just going to copy these. And then we're going to use our per unit product cost. So this per unit product cost that we calculated right here. So we're going to take this $60 all the way across. So this is going to give us the cost of our goods that we sold in each period. And you can see in this example, it's the exact same result because we don't have to worry about any work in process inventories in here. So this is what you'll need to do on your homework. This is the cost of all the units we actually sold during that period. And the last thing I want to point out before we go on to the next budget is the sample from the textbook. If you look at that sample, they did do the whole cost of goods sold budget, and this is their cost of goods sold figure. However, they could have done the shortcut, taken the same shortcut that we did. If you take your number of units sold for the year, that was 6,000. Your unit cost was $82. If you multiply that out, you get the 492,000. So the textbook example could also have used the shortened method as well. And next we'll work on the selling and general admin budget.